welcome to another episode of Stuck in One Podcast. I'm your host, Wize, and my guest today is a marketing strategist, brand storyteller, and entrepreneur who helps mission-driven businesses transform purpose into presence. She is the founder of Catalyst Brand Strategy, a boutique agency dedicated to helping conscious brands become more visible, memorable, and trusted through authentic storytelling and strategic marketing. With more than a decade of experience in brand strategy and marketing communications, she has worked with global brands including Microsoft, Reebok, Philips, GoPro, and Jack Daniels, while also helping founder-led businesses grow from startup to standout. Her expertise spans branding, public relations, digital media, leadership, workplace well-being, and the power of storytelling to create meaningful impact. Please welcome to the show, Katherine Tuominen. 2 minutes. I knew I was gonna mess it up. I knew it. But
No, all good. You
I was
did
thinking about
well.
it.
Thank you so much for having me. That was
Oh,
an incredible introduction.
pleasure's all mine. Thanks for being a guest.
Well, I'm
All right.
looking forward to diving into our
Oh,
conversation.
yes. So hold on. Let's see. All right. What first sparked your interest in storytelling and brand strategy?
Well, I kind of say that I have loved storytelling since before I even fully knew what it was. Back in the day, I was playing Barbies with my sister, and we would make such elaborate stories. We would spend all our time like designing like plots and characters and all these sorts of things. And then as I grew up, and we were kind of told, no, you can't be a writer, or artists struggle, and all these things that you hear. Well, at least you did back then, obviously, kind of before this content creator world that we're now in. And so I sort of thought, well, what else could I do? And so I was really fortunate to begin my career in the entertainment industry, where I worked for the big brands that you mentioned, such as Fox Film Studios. And we were really supporting them with their marketing and placing certain brands within the film itself, such as product placement. So that really gave me an introduction into the power of storytelling and how that works on a marketing level, but also the, I guess, risks that come with attaching a celebrity to a brand name. A lot of people think that if you slap a celebrity or a notable figure, then everything will just, it'll sell out. It'll be the best product. But actually, the reality was, which I learned very early on, if the story doesn't align with the audience and those two brands or partners aren't aligned with the core message, then people pick up that something isn't resonating and it feels disingenuous. So that really led me down a journey of, what is ethical marketing? And that's where we are today.
So can you say that was the moment you realized that branding was more than just logos and marketing?
Exactly. Yeah, there's so much smoke and mirrors out there, and it was good to kind of peek behind the curtain, so to speak, a Wizard of Oz reference, and sort of see, oh, this is what really happens behind the scenes. It's not quite what we are made to believe. So it was very eye opening, and it definitely led me to think, well, if I were to approach things in a more transparent and ethical way, what would that look like?
So how did your career evolve from corporate and entertainment work into launching Catalyst Brand Strategy?
Absolutely. So the short version is I was there before Me Too and after Me Too, and I witnessed firsthand the impacts of what happens when a story is spun a certain way, but also what can happen when women or anyone come together collectively to bravely speak up on stories and experiences that they've had for a greater good. And so I really witnessed both sides of the coin. And that led me down my own wellness and health journey and got me thinking about, well, what makes a really healthy workplace culture and what makes a great story even during tough times. And I started freelancing, and before I knew it, I was maxed out as a freelancer, and our agency really grew organically from there.
So what were some of the early challenges you faced when starting your agency?
I get this question a lot. Yes. I mean, there are so many. I've talked in the past about, not having a good contract in place. That's a big one. Making sure you've baked in things like sick leave or if there's an emergency and protecting yourself. I think, when we're first starting out, we want to do everything. We really want to give it our all. And it's very easy to burn out and, not have the right protections in place. So almost emulating some of that corporate background and making sure that's included in the contract side of things will help you be more protected. But other big lessons were things like, I guess, like hiring the wrong people. I think hiring is a big one that anyone can identify with or relate to at some stage. And I guess shaping the culture early on.
Absolutely. So what lessons did working with major global brands teach you?
Well, one of the biggest lessons that I learned is the power of being resourceful. So, it doesn't matter how big the budget is, that the budget could always be bigger, it could always be smaller. It's relative, isn't it? So, I find that having these budget constraints actually encourage a deeper level of creativity, and you get to be resourceful about how that end idea comes to life. So, to give you an example, we recently did a brand activation event where we reached out to a number of sponsors and brand ambassadors to raise awareness around neurodiversity just a couple months back. And it was a very, very lean budget. So I was transparent about that. I went to videographers and I was like, this will be one of many events. We always want to pay artists and talented creatives what they're worth. So we absolutely will meet you with this value. And we would like to extend this opportunity for what would make a long-term contract different from a one-time placement. And so this kind of helped encourage a deeper sense of collaboration, which also meant, of course, the materials produced were exceptionally high quality. Likewise, we reached out to brand ambassadors and speakers, and we asked them, this is for a charity purpose. How can we contribute your expertise in a way that will give back to the community? And what's a way that we can create some kind of equal exchange that may not always be monetary? So this could look like, for example, featuring them in a publication that was getting hosted anyway, such as USA Today. Or it could look like sharing their brand with our email list that's actively growing and announcing another event they have. So really taking the time to get to know both sides, what their goals are, and then asking, how can I make your life easier? How can we make those goals possible and make this a win-win?
Absolutely. It's always sometimes it doesn't always have to be monetary, right? You can build these relationships with people that you can find that medium spot where you can help each other out. Like you said, you can deliver their whatever they're promoting, whatever onto your newsletter and stuff like that. So it's always amazing when you're able to build those relationships with people like that, and that's something a lot of people don't realize, that they always think it has to be monetary, but when you can come to some sort of agreement where it's beneficial to both parties, and especially like how you said, when you're limited on budget and everything. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's awesome.
Absolutely. I think it really encourages people to reconsider what value truly is. And it almost places the relationship as more valuable than a one time transaction, which of course leads to so many different benefits, both in the short term and long term. So I do think it's a conversation worth continuing to have.
Absolutely. Um, how did your entrepreneur journey shape your viewing of branding?
That's a great question. So, something that I've personally struggled with, which I think your audience might find relatable, is how much of myself to actually put out online. For some context, I also have a sales background, and when you're in sales, your face, how you hold yourself, and the way you carry yourself is what sells. A lot of the time, because you're building that relationship, and you have 3 seconds to make a first impression, and then basically convert them as soon as you can within reason. So that's more for the high ticket sales, but. The point of this is it really got me thinking early on is how much of my personal life do I want to be sharing publicly, and where is that division between who I am as a person and who I am as a founder? And something that I've personally done is clearly created a distinction between my own personal life and my world versus the brand catalyst, and then really made sure that I'm kind of basically sticking to those two lanes. So this means that I do obviously have privacy, freedom. I'm able to kind of draw that line clearly without necessarily getting those lens blurred early on. And then it's a lot harder to kind of backtrack and remove what has been publicly shared. So that's one of the ways that I've been able to show up. And of course, I still very much speak openly and meaningfully about the topics I care about, especially in relation to Catalyst and the things we do within work. But it's also nice to know that some things are just mine.
So, what does purpose-driven business mean to you?
Oh, I love that question. That's great. Yes. In terms of what purpose driven means to me, I think it's really about that kind of fire or spark that some people have. It's almost like this itch or this untangible thing that just keeps you up at night. It's the thing that gets you to like leap out of bed and rush to your computer or rush to your journal to jot down an idea before you forget. It's such a it feels almost like in those spark moments, it's fleeting, but the thing is, it keeps nagging at you, right? Like you might go back to corporate, you might return to kind of like whatever your day to day is, but in the back of your mind, it's still there, and nothing gets rid of it ever. Years can go by, and it's still like, oh, I want to do this thing, I want to do this thing. That's when it's your purpose, and it's just you can continue to spend years pushing it aside or saying maybe one day, but I think the harsh reality is if it's continuing to kind of gnaw at you, you absolutely must honor it and follow that purpose.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. For me, it took me launching my podcast to find my purpose. Like I had gone through life not knowing what I wanted to do. I had a good job, but I didn't know what was my purpose. What was I supposed to be doing? And when I started my podcast, it gave me my voice. It gave me something where now I've built this platform where I give people an opportunity to share their story and share what they're doing with the world. And I've had some great conversations and been able to learn from some of these conversations. There was a point where I felt so selfish, right? Because I was enjoying the conversation so much because I was getting, but then my guest pointed out, they pointed out that I'm sharing it with so many other people with my platform and all these different people that it was important for me it was okay for me to enjoy the conversation. There was nothing selfish about me wanting to grow and learn.
I love that. Yes. And I think, it's almost like we're taught that like enjoyment is a selfish act. But actually, I think that if more people were genuinely happy with what they do, we would live in a very different world. So it's so important to, I guess, to have those moments to check in on yourself and say, hey, actually, this is a good thing. And of course, your audience can kind of sense when you're genuinely excited and feeling authentic about the things that you share. And that translates to who they might share the podcast episode with and so on. So I think, it's one of the greatest things about being able to share content and having it be so accessible these days.
Absolutely, yeah. So why do so many brands struggle to communicate their story effectively?
Well, one of the biggest things I see, especially founders or people who have left a corporate world, struggle with frequently is the ability to identify the question, why you, what makes you unique, or what is so special about this product or software that you're developing. So in marketing, it's called your UVP, which stands for unique value proposition. And whether you're applying that to you as a person, as a founder, or the brand that you're building, that question has to be addressed. So it's definitely the thing that we see people struggle with most, especially when you're trying to consolidate decades worth of knowledge, insights, experience, transferable skills, and all the rest into a kind of clear, bite-sized story or explanation as to what makes you unique. So the advice I give to someone who might be struggling with this is first you need to kind of look at your, it's called a through line. So the kind of core message that stands out throughout your entire journey. That could be, from college, that could be from your first job, it could be from that kind of pivotal career pivot, and then very much apply the kind of 3-arc story structure where you've got that beginning, the middle, that kind of like tough point, and then the end, or now what you're building from that aha moment or those lessons learned. And consolidating it into these 3 steps can mean that it becomes a lot easier to almost digest decades worth of experiences into these key moments that then make a clear story as to why you're here today.
how important is authenticity in today's marketing landscape?
Absolutely essential. Our audiences are more exposed to content than ever. Now we're seeing the complete blur of what is AI and what isn't. Most of us can barely tell. Videos getting so scarily accurate and creepy. So I think we're craving authenticity now more than ever. And maybe it got expedited in during COVID, but we haven't necessarily recovered from that fully yet, in the sense of building real connections and craving authenticity. So I do think that the brands that do are true to their authenticity and show up in a way that is clearly aligned with what they stand for and who they are stand out from a mile from those who are just posting generic AI slop or regurgitating the same kind of stories that everyone has heard. And that's ultimately what builds relationships. And humans will always crave that level of connection.
Yeah, and that's why I enjoy doing my podcast. Right, is the human connection of it, is the having this just real conversation, not. And there's nothing with people who use AI. That's great, but it's just that genuine conversation where two people just are just enjoying what they like love to do.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, we can tell, even if we can't put our finger on like something about that fell off, or I don't know, I got the wrong impression. And we might not know exactly why or what, to give a kind of millennial term, gave us the ick, but something is, not sitting quite right. So I think that's where, kind of being true to yourself first and foremost is essential.
How can founders identify the story their audience actually wants to hear?
That's a great question. In terms of how can they identify what their audience wants to hear, I think can be quite different to what they want to share, depending on who the audience is. And this is where we go back to more of that strategic branding side of things. So if you're trying to figure out what your audience actually wants to hear or what they're investigating, data is absolutely essential. Advice that I give is to scrape forums, use AI tools to look at Reddit, look for common threads, similar words that get repeated when people are talking about your product, software, or category. And then you'll notice that the same kind of complaints start to resurface. So you're able to recognize a pattern, or AI can help you recognize that pattern. And from there, you can better assess what direction the general audience or public might be leaning towards in terms of certain subjects or questions that they may have. And this can really help inform your content strategy, but also what topics that you may want to explore. And, there would be so many subcategories within that. So just because the data is saying this is what everyone wants to hear doesn't mean you have to go and do that. Obviously, there will be some topics within that where you say, that's me too. I completely relate with this. That's exactly what our brand stands for. And it'll be a natural alignment. And others where you'll say, actually, we don't need to speak on this. This isn't necessarily relevant to what we're focused on right now. And you can give those a miss. So starting with the data would be a really great point. And then from there, assessing which direction to take.
What role does emotional connection play in marketing?
Absolutely essential. I think emotional connection, marketing, and sales kind of go hand in hand. So there's a saying that, no sale, every sale is emotional. Even people who think they're making a rational decision, it is still an emotional purchase. It's still an emotional buy. And obviously, many of the marketing sales psychology tactics very heavily lean on emotions in order to move someone through that customer journey. And these days, it's much more about what's called direct response copy, meaning instead of getting someone to kind of look around a website, get lost, figure out what they may or may not do next, it's all about get them to click that button, get them to move that one step further, and then we'll get them to that next step, and so on and so forth. So this really speaks to how split our attention is these days and how much competing attention we're grappling with. And so to really make their life simpler and guide them through that process, you do have to lead with emotion and then reduce the overwhelm by giving them one very clear next step to move forward with.
Awesome. So how do brands balance creativity with data driven decisions?
Oh, I love that question. So many great questions. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I've noticed a lot of our founders may grapple with. In terms of the, I guess, creativity versus data, I do think they go hand in hand and they're not necessarily either or. So I can only kind of answer it from my own lens, but I always think that the data can be presented in a way that it sparks ideas, right? It's like your thought partner. It's if you're it's almost like when you're with a friend and you're spitballing ideas and you're like, oh, that's a great idea, now let's do that. And so I really see AI and these kind of tools as an opportunity to brainstorm deeper and almost expand on what might be possible and almost push the edges of what you think, and see what that contrasting opinion could be. And so it's really great for tools like that. And then from that creativity piece, likewise, I think you also need to intentionally carve out time away from the screen and do things outside of your direct industry or vertical. So if you're ever stuck or feeling uninspired, instead of looking at competitors or instead of looking at what everyone else is doing in the same space, switch gears completely. Go to an art gallery, go to a crazy DJ set, do something outside of your normal day to day. And that's when the inspiration or idea will spark, because you're doing something that kind of, I guess, shocks the system or encourages you to think outside of the box. And then you can bring those creative ideas back to the drawing board, back to the data analytics, and figure out, okay, how can I weave this in a way that is truly unique, relevant to our audience, and fun.
Awesome. You've become a strong advocate for workplace well-being. Why is that
Mm.
important?
It's essential. Like, it's an absolute non-negotiable. I think these days, there's been a lot of talk around how we're in a gig economy, and that's only getting worse with the use of AI. And so I think a lot of people are multi hyphenates. They're working the day job, plus they've got their side hustle, plus they've got another business thing that they've got with their friends, and a lot of people are just doing what they can to survive. And so, with this in mind, companies need to be considering, if they truly want to retain their staff, if they want to retain their talent from, oh, I'm going to do this other thing because it actually gives me more work life freedom, and why would I stay? They need to be thinking about well being beyond just vanity metrics or flashy gym memberships or things that they think mean well being, but it's actually disconnected to what their employers or employees truly want. So, there's plenty of stats that show the costs of losing out on retention and absenteeism and all these sorts of things. It truly doesn't make any business sense for companies to just keep slogging along in this kind of traditional way of working, and instead they need to be broadening their perspective as to what truly makes a healthy workplace and what do employees want these days.
So how can businesses create healthier cultures while still driving results?
So, a big thing I talk about a lot is the idea of creating psychological safety within your team. It depends how big the team is, but typically, you want to have someone that they can go to say, hey, I'm actually really struggling with this, or what, something's happened in my personal life and I'm just not able to show up in the full capacity that I normally would be. And just having the ability to kind of meet them where they're at. Sometimes that can mean by being vulnerable yourself, saying, hey, this has happened. Give me a second. I need to, take a moment. We're all human. And also showing them that there would be consequences if they ask, for a day off, or if they come to you saying, my work isn't doing as well as it could be. Can I take up an extra course, or can I take a moment to figure out, how can I really improve this? So really having that honest conversation with them, and vice versa, is an essential starting point. Other than that, I would say asking them honestly, what their kind of personal goals are, and then what their what their business goals are, and how those two things can coincide. So, to give you an example, a lot of our employees are digital nomads, so they're working all over the world. And what this means is, some of them will their personal goal might be, I want a visa in this country because it gives me better opportunities and I'd love to move my family here one day. And so what you could say is, okay, I can make this happen. And likewise, we're working towards this goal, this revenue metric, or this kind of retention metric with clients, or whatever that core goal is that they would be responsible for. And then you can kind of say, let's achieve this milestone here in this workforce area, and then I'll help you to put together this application, or I'll give you a bonus that will mean you can apply to this, or whatever it may mean. So you're really helping them achieve their personal goals, live a better, healthier life outside of work, based on what they deem for themselves. And then also they're helping you to grow the company and achieve those metrics.
Awesome. So we mentioned, you mentioned AI before. How do you see AI changing marketing and storytelling, and what part will it play in the future of branding?
It's definitely a very loaded question. I would say at this point, one of the things that we've seen a lot is the way it's changing the lexicon of how everyday people use words. I was reading an article recently that said more and more people are using things like quietly, or what are some of the other words? Delve. Some of these words that AI absolutely loves. I had never heard anyone, except for kind of like my very academic friends, use some of these terms. And now all of a sudden, it would just pop up in everyday conversation. And I'm like, okay, this cannot be a coincidence. And so I think that it is changing the way we're engaging with each other, the way we're consuming information, and even how we speak. And from a PR or marketing perspective, it's also changing from an infrastructural level, where we're not doing as much kind of rote copy paste, kind of day-to-day administrative work. And now all of that can be automated, which means that if you're doing it right, you can spend more time problem solving deeper, more complex problems, and not necessarily spending your time on day-to-day things that can be automated or given to AI within reason.
Absolutely. What advice would you give entrepreneurs trying to build visibility today?
What stage of entrepreneurship are they?
They might be starting out.
Oh, that's fair. Yes. Well, if you're just starting out, my gosh, I'm trying to put myself back in those shoes. I would say there's almost a tendency to do all the things, like throw spaghetti at the wall. People think they have to do a TikTok dance, then jump on Instagram, then do this. And you're almost spinning all your wheels all at once, trying as many kind of tactics as you can find to see what's going to stick and what's going to work. And honestly, my advice is to close the loop on validating your product or offer, meaning you need a paying customer as soon as possible to show this is actually working before you start doing the fancy logos, the fancy brands, whatever. Even before you kind of pour all your time and energy into figuring out algorithm trends, you want to figure out the closest and quickest way to get your product into the right person's hands and see, will they actually purchase this? That's it. And I think when you're able to understand this, it becomes a lot easier to say no to, not necessarily spinning your wheels on this thing, and instead focusing all your energy into this other thing instead. And I also think in today's digital world, people forget that you can go to your neighbor, you can go to a friend of a friend, you can go to your warm networks and say, hey, I'm building this thing. It's very early stage. I've got a bit of a beta test or a pilot program that I'd love to run with you. Would you consider investing in X, or being part of that founding group as we run this, because it's perfect for you for the following reasons. So the caveat to that is not giving it to your friends and family, because they might not be your ideal audience, but you can still use your warm networks to reach that ideal audience. So don't discount the physical world.
Absolutely. It's funny because I've been working on a course, and one day I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine. We host a show together, and I was telling her how I wanted I was building this course to help people launch their podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And when I broke it down to her and told her the whole thing, she just jumped in and said, "Sign me up." Like
Yeah.
it wasn't I wasn't pitching her the program. It was just out of conversation, and I was just telling her my plan and it worked. And in March, she launched a podcast, and now she referred a friend of hers to so we can help her launch her podcast.
Oh, I
But
love that.
but when you just said it takes you, it forget the logo and all that, get the first client, and it just happened. It just happened naturally. Like I wasn't, like I said, I
Yeah.
wasn't pitching her the program, and which was great because I was just telling her I was building, working on it, and I got to build it with her, right? So I
Yes.
got to ask. I would teach and all this, and I was able to ask her for feedback and see, hey, what was something that what was questions that you wanted to ask that I didn't answer, and she answered them, and it was able
Mhm.
to help me mold the program even more now because something I didn't think of. She gave me an answer. She gave me something that, hey, this is something I might want to implement into the program, and so it was
Mhm.
awesome. And now I'm working with her. I haven't had the chance to, but I will be reaching out to her friend and helping them launch their podcast. And so it was just, I just found it good that you mentioned that. So
Yes, that's incredible. That's such a great example of co-creation and the power it holds. And now she'll end up being a great testimonial and a case study, and it just sort of creates a ripple effect from there. But something that you hinted at when you were talking about, giving your example, is the idea that you can still be building it. It doesn't even need to be completely finished. And I think that's the other thing. A lot of people spend, I had a chat with someone. I felt really bad for him. He built a diagnostic. He'd spent almost like 5 years building a diagnostic tool. By now, diagnostic tools are everywhere, but he was one of the first. But he spent so much time building it that now it's such heavy competition, and he never took the time to actually validate the concept first. And so now no one wants to buy, and he's really struggling to find the right kind of partners and investors to get on board. So I think it's also a lesson in, sometimes you don't even need to build the actual product, object, or software. Instead, you can just create a landing page and sell the idea, see if someone's even open to that, and then kind of take it from there.
and that's how it went. It had, so I had went to just some meeting where I got to com- interact with so many different people. And when I was at that meeting, I spoke to this young lady, and I was telling her about the course, and I'm just waiting to. She's like, "Why wait? She just build it as you go. Just
Right.
build it as you go." And I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." And then when Yayoi offered to take the course, it was like, "Oh, now I can build it as here I go. Let's just." And so I've been able to build it and tweak it, and like I said, just the feedback from her was was so much was so helpful, and because,
Mhm.
like, again, there was things that I didn't implement that she said, hey, maybe if you added this, because I had she it was, again, I asked what questions you have that I couldn't answer, and then she was like, here,
Mhm.
this and this. So I was like, okay, I can go back and tweak the program here, and here. So it's been an amazing experience to really go in and jump right into it, not wait till it was ready. Just go ahead and build as I went.
Yes, I love that. That's such a great example, and I hope your audience takes this as a sign to go and do the thing. Build it. Don't just brainstorm. Just put it out there, and you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. So, what impact do you hope your work leaves behind?
I definitely hope that our work not only impacts our team and gives them a brighter future and leaves them feeling very fulfilled with their day to day work and excited and happy with the clients that we've connected, but also that our clients end up creating even stronger brands that then get into the hands of people who need their services most. So that's a big reason why we love working in the health and wellness industry, because it genuinely does change lives. We are not directly impacting those lives, but through the branding and reaching more people as a secondary degree, we absolutely are. And so that's kind of the thing that's most fulfilling, knowing that we truly are helping to make a difference in the world, even in just within our capacity.
Awesome. What where can okay? So if someone listening has a powerful story but doesn't believe anyone would care to hear it, what would you tell them?
there's always someone who wants to hear your story and who would relate to it. I know, you've probably heard this before and you're like, oh no, but like I really, I have a normal life or I'm not that interesting. If you think about vlogs, which are basically just like
Yeah.
videos of people doing their day-to-day stuff, vlogs are so boring. It's literally people like buttering their bread, like no metaphors. Like it's the most bland stuff. And people watch it and they love it because it creates that sense of connection. It allows them to see, hey, someone else is just doing this everyday thing like me and I'm not alone. So yeah, I think there is always some level of interest. It's just a matter of deciding if that's something that you would like to put out there, and then seeing what kind of response that comes from there.
Awesome. Well, we've come to the part of the show where you're gonna get the spotlight, and you get to plug away, let people know where they can find you, website, everything.
Thank you. Yes, so you're welcome to visit us at www.catalystbrandstrategy.com. We do have a number of free resources which might be suitable for those who are early on in their journey, such as the 1,000 list of speaking opportunities, and that's completely free for you to download. And you can also book a complimentary call where we map out your PR strategy and give you some tips in order to become your own publicist or potentially move forward with working together. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you for being such a great guest. I appreciate your time. But don't leave just yet. Let me close out the show and we'll chat a little bit off the air. But thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest. I appreciate your time. This was awesome.
Likewise, thank you.
All right, everybody. Another great episode is in the books. I want to thank Katherine for sharing her insights on storytelling, branding, and building businesses with purpose. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to Stuck in My Mind podcast, leave a review, share this conversation with someone building a business or brand. Remember, your story isn't just what you do. It's why people choose to connect with you. Stay wise. You know how your boy Wize does it. Peace out.